This is a video about percents and percent applications. Okay, so here's a little presentation that might help you with seeing how percents work. What does percent mean? You can see that percent actually transforms into 100, or percent means out of 100. So 7% means 7 over 100. Percent also means part of a whole, so it's either out of 100 or a whole. 100% is actually one whole of something. We're going to be looking at this triangle and see how percent and whole are related, or part and whole are related to percent. But first we need to make sure that we can change percent into fractions and a couple other things like decimals. So let's start off with percents into fractions. If we know that percent means out of 100, then we can take our percent and put it over 100. So put that 0, 0, and the 1 on the bottom. So we take 50, put it over 100, and then we can divide the top and bottom by 50, and we end up with 1/2. You always have to reduce your fraction. 35%. Here's our 100 that we're going to put in the denominator. See, that slash actually kind of reminds you that you're dividing. So you get 35 over 100. We can divide the top and bottom by 5, and you end up with 7 over 20. 17 over 100. It doesn't reduce. There's nothing else that's going to go in there. Okay, so we have 4.5 over 100. It's going to look like this. We're going to make it into 4.5 as a decimal. We don't like decimals in the numerator, so, or anywhere in the fraction actually, so we're going to multiply the top and bottom by 10 to clear that decimal out. We end up with 45 over 1,000. And now we can divide the top and bottom by 5, and we get 9 over 200. Same idea for the last problem here, 0.3%. And we're going to write it first, just like we said, 0.3 over 100, just like a percent is. We're going to multiply it by 10. If it had been 0.03 on the top, we'd multiply it by 100. However many decimal places there are up here, we'd multiply by that many powers of 10. We'll end up with 3 over 1,000, and you can't reduce that. So that's our answer. Next thing you have to be able to do is change percent to a decimal. And this is actually pretty easy. You can either divide by 100 or just moving the decimal place 2 places. So anytime we're doing these, you're going to take the decimal place and you're just going to move it over 2 places, 1, 2. And when you do, you'll end up with 0.5. So look at 7. There's no decimal place. It's at the end, the furthest right. Move it over 2 places, and when you do, you'll see that there was a space here. We need to placehold with a 0, and I get 0.07. For 250, move the decimal place over 2, and I get 2.5. And I just want you to realize, some people think you move the decimal to the very front, and you don't. You don't move it to the very front. You just move it over 2 every time. Remember, 100% is the same as saying 1 whole. So 250% is giving us 2.5 whole. Lastly, we have 66 2/3%. We're going to write 66 2/3 as a decimal, 66.6 repeating, and then we'll move that over 2, and we end up getting 0.6 repeating, or 0.67 as our decimal. Okay, let's change decimal to percent. We're going to do the exact opposite that we did on the other page. We're going to multiply by 100 this time, or move the decimal place to the right 2. So 0.15, move the decimal place to the right 2, and get 15%. Don't forget to add that percent sign. 3.12, move it over 2, 312%, because that's bigger than 1. A 1 here would be 1 whole, or 100%, so that's over 100%. 0.023, we're moving it over 2 again, 2.3%. Okay, moving on. Let's look at some percent problems here. Okay, so it says 8 is 20% of 40. That's just it's like a number sentence. And we could try translating that into symbols. And just a little review, is the same as equal sign, of is multiply. You can either make percent into divide by 100 or a decimal. So we're going to look at 8 is 20% of 40. And if you try that out, is it true? Well, 0.2 times 40 is 8, so yeah, it works. So let's go ahead and try some. What is 20% of 40? So anything unknown you should write as a variable. We're going to use M here for like missing. So what is 20% of 40? We already know the answer to this, but we can multiply it and get 8. But we're going to try using the triangle method we talked about before. So for a triangle method, let's learn a little bit more about that. Okay, what you're going to do is we've got P is part, W is whole, and percent means part of 100, or out of 100, and you got to multiply. It's a decimal, so you have to multiply by 100 to get percentage. What you do is you cover up the thing that you want to find, and then you do the other operation. For example, if I want to find the percentage, I'm going to cover it up with my thumb, and then I'm going to see that I take the part and divide by the whole. So divide these two to get the percent. Or if I want to find the whole, I'm going to take the part and divide by the percentage, divide those two to get the whole. Or if I want to find the part, I'm going to take the whole and multiply it by the percentage to get the part. So you're going to cover up what you want to do to get to the operation to get the answer. So we're going to use the triangle method and try 8 is what percent of 40. So 8 is what percent? What percent? I don't know percentage. I'm going to cover up percent. Okay. And so that tells me I'm going to do part divided by whole, and I get 0.2 or 20%. Okay, so the next one, it says 8 is 20% of what number? So I need to cover up, I don't know what the number is, part divided by a percentage. So if I take my part and divide by my percentage as a decimal, 0.2, I get my whole of 40. Okay, so that's a way of using the triangle method instead of translating it into symbols. Whichever one works for you is great. For these problems, I'm just going to give you a chance to pause and think about what each of these might be in terms of what you'd cover up, and then what the answer would be, and then I'm going to show you what the answer is. So what is 75% of 23? What would you cover up? I would cover up the part is what I'm looking for, and the answer would be 1725. So 7 is what percent of 35? Pause for a second if you want. So I'm going to cover up the percent, and the answer is 20%. 5 is 17% of what number? Pause for a second if you want to figure it out for yourself, and start when you're ready. I'm going to cover up the whole, so we're going to be dividing there, and the answer is 29.4. Okay, so let's look at some problems here. What is 28% of 45? I'm going to do this quick translation. What is 28 times 45? It's 12.6. I can also cover it up. I've got a percentage, I've got a whole, I'm going to have to do part, so I'm just multiplying. Okay? 18 is what percent of 90? 18 is what percent? Covering this part up, so it's part divided by whole, and I get 20%. Last one says 7 is 40% of what number? I'm going to cover up my whole number. That's what I want. 7 divided by 0.4, and I get 17.5. Okay. Word problem is our favorite. A manufacturing company found that 1,125 of the 75,000 cam lifters it manufactured in September were defective. What percent were defective? Okay, so we've got 1,125 parts, a whole of 75,000. We're going to cover up our percent because that's what we're looking for. Looks like part divided by whole, that we're finding. Okay, part divided by whole. Remember, when you have a fraction like this, it just means divide, just means part divided by whole. Okay? So we've got those two numbers divided by each other. You get this 0.015. We're moving our decimal place over 1, 2, and we get 1.5% defective. Okay, we've got another example. Your boss has decided to give you a 5% raise, and currently you make $16.90 an hour. What will you earn per hour after your raise, and round to the nearest cent? Okay, so what is 5% of $6.90? That's a pretty straightforward translation. 5% of $16.90, it's 0.845, but we can cover it up. What is 5% of $16.90? That's a part. So we're multiplying them together. And we get 0.845 or 85-cent raise. So you're not going to get paid 85 cents. That would really stink. You're getting $16.90 plus your 85-cent raise, and that's $17.75 an hour. One more page to look at here. We've got Doug's salary this year of $42,000, and next year it's $42,840. And what is the percent increase? So what you have to do for these is subtract the 2 to find the difference. And the difference is $840. And then you take that difference and divide it by the original amount. So the difference of $840 divided by the original of $42,840 gives you 0.0196, and move the decimal over 1, 2. And you get 1.96%. And we're going to round that to about 2% increase that you get paid. Last problem, the regular price of an inkjet printer is $560, but it's on sale for $470. What's the percent of the discount? And round to the nearest whole percent. Same process here. Subtract the 2 to find the difference. Subtract it when you get $90, and then we're going to take that difference divided by the original amount. So it's 90 divided by 560. When you do that, you get 0.1607. Move the decimal place over 2, 1, 2. And you get 16%, so about a 16% discount. Well, I hope this tutorial has helped you with understanding percents and how to go between decimal and fraction, and how to find missing amounts, and how to negotiate word problems. And you'll be successful, and good luck.